Welcome. In our channel, drop a comment and let me know if your online lover is not of your type, then you will date him or not. I was at work one day zoning out a bit when I sent a playful message to my online crush. Buy me a cupcake now. You're the person who loves me the most in the world. Little did I know, that innocent message would set off a chain reaction I could never have predicted. Not even 5 minutes later, the office gossip group chat exploded. Someone had seen the boss casting his screen during a meeting, and on it was a message from someone with the nickname Baby, asking him for a small cake. My heart stopped. Could it be? No way. That couldn't possibly be the message I had just sent to my online boyfriend, right? I tried not to think about it. Honestly, I didn't want to. But then, as if on cue, I received a message from my online lover himself. Baby, don't worry. I was just working. I must be the one who loves you the most. Hearing that only made my heart race faster. I blushed, but also felt a strange sense of unease creeping in. Let me rewind a bit. Recently, I started an online romance with someone I met in the virtual world. A guy who truly moved something inside me. We agreed not to exchange photos until we met in person, choosing instead to connect through texts and voice messages. There was something uniquely charming about getting to know someone without seeing them, like building a bond purely on emotion and personality. Still, I had plans to meet him after the new year. I kept imagining what he might look like. His voice was so warm and soothing. Surely his appearance matched that. I pictured him as kind, gentle, and full of care. Exactly the kind of person I needed in my life after long days of stressful work. And those days were indeed long. My company had been preparing for a major project, and everyone was working overtime. It was exhausting, but I always had someone to talk to, him. Whenever I felt overwhelmed, I'd confide in him, and he'd listen patiently, even scolding my ruthless boss along with me. After we successfully completed the project, I allowed myself a moment of slacking off. I was hungry, so I messaged him jokingly, asking him to buy me a small cake. I wrote, buy me a small cake now. You are the person who loves me the most in the world. What happened next was anything but funny. Less than 5 minutes later, the group chat went wild again. Rumor had it that during a meeting, the boss had received a message from someone named Baby, asking him to buy a small cake. People were stunned. Some were even making jokes about how cold and distant the boss usually looked. How could someone actually call him Baby? Froze. Was this really happening? Had my sweet little message somehow gone to the wrong person? The thought made me panic, but then I got another message from my online boyfriend. Baby, don't worry. I was just working. I must be the one who loves you the most. He sounded sincere, and hearing his voice calmed me a bit. Still, a tiny seed of doubt had been planted in my mind. Later that day, I received a red envelope from him, a digital gift, with a note that said, please treat my beloved baby to a small cake. Then came a voice message. I clicked play and heard his soft, familiar voice. I was in a meeting earlier and couldn't reply. Are you mad at me? His tone was so close, so intimate, that I felt my face flush all over again. But still, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was off. I decided to test him a little. Casually asked about his job. He told me he was self-employed, running some small business. When I tried to dig deeper, he avoided giving clear answers. Maybe it was just a coincidence. After all, there's no way my warm-hearted online lover could be the same cold, work-obsessed boss I dealt with every day, right? We made plans to finally meet after the new year. I was excited, even a little nervous. Before that, though, I had to go home for the holidays. When I mentioned my online boyfriend to my family, my cousin and aunt laughed at me. They assumed he was either underage or unattractive, someone hiding behind a screen because they were afraid to show their real face. I brushed off their comments, but deep down they stung. I knew our relationship was real, even if we hadn't met yet. And then, just in time for the new year, I received a gift from him, one that shut my doubting relatives up completely. It was a thoughtful set of nutritional supplements, carefully chosen for both my parents and my young nephew. It wasn't expensive, but it showed such sincerity and care that my whole family was touched. My parents were thrilled. They said the gesture spoke volumes about his character. Even my skeptical relatives had nothing more to say. I felt proud and happy, knowing that the person I was falling for was not only sweet to me, but also considerate toward my loved ones. But then, back at work, I saw something strange again. The office group chat was buzzing once more, this time about the boss. Apparently, he had been looking at gifts suitable for the elderly and children recently. Someone even joked that maybe the boss had a special someone in his life. That's when I realized something shocking. The nutritional supplements my online boyfriend had sent, weren't they the exact same products the boss had supposedly been checking out? Was this another weird coincidence? Or were these two people, my warm, caring Ethan and my cold, intimidating boss, somehow one and the same? I tried to reason it away. Maybe the boss was just preparing for a charity event the company was organizing. Maybe I was reading too much into things. I convinced myself that Ethan and the boss were two separate people. After all, Ethan was nothing like the boss, right? A few days later, I found myself working overtime again. All my plans to meet Ethan at a cozy cafe had to be pushed forward. The next day, I walked into the coffee shop, heart pounding with anticipation. I scanned the room and spotted a man sitting in the corner, dressed sharply, exuding confidence and elegance. Was that really him? As I approached, he looked up and smiled warmly. "Miss, who are you?" he asked politely. I introduced myself as Sophie, and recognition lit up his eyes. He introduced himself as Ethan. He looked even better in person, more handsome than I had imagined and clearly well off. As he teased me gently, I felt butterflies in my stomach. He handed me a small box. Inside was a beautiful purple crystal necklace. I gasped in delight, and he offered to help me put it on. As he leaned in, his fingers lightly brushing my neck, I felt a flutter in my chest. He complimented me, saying I looked beautiful, and I couldn't help but feel flustered. I awkwardly admitted I had forgotten to bring him a gift, and he simply laughed it off. Being able to see you is the biggest gift. We talked for hours, sharing stories and laughter. Everything felt perfect. But when I mentioned my job, I noticed a flicker of discomfort in his expression. I wondered if he had any connection to my company, but I quickly dismissed the thought. At one point, he even brought up the nutritional supplements he had sent me. I thanked him again, and he seemed genuinely glad they arrived safely. The conversation flowed naturally, and I felt closer to him than ever. Still, something felt a little off. Meeting him in person felt different from our online chats. More formal, almost like we were strangers trying to get to know each other rather than lovers reuniting. I thought maybe I was moving too fast, that we should slow things down and take it step by step. When I hesitated and suggested we just be friends for now, he looked genuinely hurt. His eyes turned red, and for a moment I saw vulnerability in his gaze. I couldn't bear to leave him like that. So I took it back and said, "No, you're still my baby." Back at work, I was still riding high from our meeting. But soon reality hit hard. One afternoon my supervisor, a man known for his arrogance, tried to blame me for a budget error that was clearly his fault. I stood my ground, presented evidence, and refused to take the fall. He threatened me, warning that if I didn't comply, I could lose my job. Heartbroken and furious, I called Ethan and told him everything. To my surprise, he calmly reassured me. "Don't worry. I know people in senior management. I'll help you sort this out." I was taken aback. He knew people in my company. I hadn't expected that. But I was too overwhelmed to dwell on it at the time. Determined, I reported the issue directly to upper management. My supervisor mocked me, calling me insignificant and claiming no one would care about my complaint. But I stayed silent, choosing to let my actions speak louder than words. Eventually the situation turned around. Senior management announced that the boss himself would handle the case. When I heard that, I felt a rush of hope. Soon after, the boss launched a serious investigation and fired my supervisor. Relieved and proud of myself, I reflected on everything that had happened, until a troubling thought crossed my mind. Did Ethan have anything to do with this? Did he contact the boss on my behalf? I decided to confront him. I asked if the senior executive he knew was actually the boss. He responded by suggesting we meet in person to talk. On the weekend we met again. As we sat across from each other, the sun setting outside, I braced myself for whatever he was about to say. Then he dropped the bomb. Sophie. I am the boss of your company. I stared at him in complete shock. My online boyfriend, the man I called baby, the one I complained to about my boss, was my actual boss. I couldn't process it. I wanted to scream, cry, maybe jump out the window. Sitting there, cutting his steak with elegant precision, was none other than the man I had been ranting about for months. It was surreal. I mean, how does that even happen? I had shared everything with him. My frustrations, my fears, even photos of my daily life. And all this time he was the very person I was venting about. The irony was crushing. I had fallen for my boss, and not just in some romantic comedy kind of way. This was real, messy, and utterly confusing. All I could do was sit there, staring blankly, wondering how my life had turned into this bizarre drama. There was a slight pause between us, and then Ethan reached out and exchanged my untouched steak with his. He said gently, "Why don't you eat?" My fingers on my thigh tensed slightly as I mumbled, "I'm not in the mood." He gave me a soft look before responding, "You know, your body is your capital. You should take care of it." Then he added with a light smile, "And you're too thin, eat more." The restaurant wasn't an authentic Western one, but watching him sit across from me, straight-backed and elegantly cutting his food, made me feel oddly conflicted inside. Coming here felt like walking into something inevitable. We both drove separately, so we hadn't ordered wine. Instead, he asked for a glass of water for himself and a glass of milk for me. I looked at him, slightly taken aback. "I'm past the growing up stage," I muttered. He just smiled and said, "Calcium supplement." I sighed quietly to myself. What was I supposed to do now? Who could handle this kind of situation with a clear head? I don't even remember how I got through that meal. It didn't taste like much. After paying, we stepped outside into the cool night breeze. The confusion in my mind slowly started to untangle as I walked, but Ethan followed closely behind. When he suddenly reached out, I instinctively closed my eyes, unsure of what he was about to do. But he only helped fix a strand of hair that had been messed up by the wind. My heart was pounding, whether from nerves or something else I couldn't tell. After a long pause, I finally found the courage to speak. "Ethan." But he interrupted me gently, his eyes softer than the city lights around us. "What are your plans next?" Of course there was a plan. As originally intended, we went across the street to the cinema to catch a movie after dinner. It was a newly released sci-fi film, fast-paced with stunning visual effects. I figured it would be engaging enough for both of us. I had booked tickets for 8 o'clock, but now I wasn't sure if I wanted to go through with it. Ethan noticed my hesitation and blinked his bright eyes, looking unusually serious. He was tall, much taller than me, and his posture was as straight as a pine tree. He leaned down slightly and asked, "Can you spend the night with me?" We were standing in a busy area, and it was the weekend. People were everywhere. I stared blankly at the long line in front of the ticket machine. Why did things end up like this? How did I let myself get drawn back in again? And why were we now walking side by side into the cinema? I recalled the way his eyes looked just moments ago, deep pools reflecting neon lights, and how I had fallen into them without realizing. I silently scolded myself for being so easily captivated by his charm. Oh well, maybe if this doesn't work out, we can still remain friends. We had been online lovers for so long after all. As I stood waiting in line, my phone vibrated in my pocket. A message popped up from Ethan. "Sophie, what do you want to drink?" I shivered slightly. I had developed a conditioned reflex every time I saw his name now. I turned to look toward the snack counter and saw him already standing there, 1.8 meters tall, dressed sharply, holding flowers in one arm. He was definitely noticeable among the crowd. "I bought the set meal coupon, I'll pick it up later," I replied. The line was long and I thought it wasn't worth queuing twice. "I'll buy it directly and keep the coupon for next time," I typed. I laughed softly to myself at the word next time. I took a deep breath, grabbed my ticket and stepped out of line. Just then, Ethan came walking toward me, carrying a giant cup of iced Coke in one hand, a bucket of popcorn in the other, and a bouquet of roses tucked under his arm. Even in that state, he looked completely composed. I hurried over and took the flowers and drink from him. "These are for you," he said, handing me the roses. I rolled my eyes playfully. No need to be so considerate. But what surprised me more was that he had ordered a couple's set meal, one drink with 2 straws and a heart-shaped design on the packaging. Very eye-catching. We still had some time before the movie started, so we found a seat and sat down. The cinema was noisy, with the theme song of another movie playing in the background. Our corner was quiet, almost awkwardly so. I glanced at the big screen where the trailer of our movie was playing and stiffly commented, "The special effects are pretty realistic." Ethan paused and looked ahead. "That's actually 2 hours. Has this actor started doing Avatar sequels?" I hesitated. "No. That's Sam Worthington on screen." He turned to me with a knowing look. I realized I had exposed my ignorance. My attempt to sound knowledgeable had failed, and I decided not to speak again. Silence built a wall between us. I was beginning to feel chilly when Ethan suddenly touched my face with a cold cola in his hand. He seemed amused. "Please don't laugh," I muttered. "When you do, my blood pressure rises, my heartbeat becomes irregular, and my chi gets disrupted." Another long silence passed until a soft young voice broke it. A girl in a beige autumn dress approached, her cheeks slightly flushed, her eyes fixed on Ethan. I followed her gaze and saw the smile on his face fade. His lips curved downward into something cold and unapproachable. She hesitated but still managed to ask, "Excuse me, can I add your WeChat?" Ethan didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned his gaze toward me, then halfway down to the pink rose lying in my arms. I handed it back to him. He took it, then said awkwardly to the girl, "Sorry, I have a girlfriend." "Girlfriend?" she echoed, clearly confused. "Who is your girlfriend? You're just my boss, right?" She smiled nervously. "I just assumed you didn't know each other earlier." Ethan turned to me and said simply, "Well, she's my girlfriend." I held my breath and slowly, she looked at him again. He smiled sincerely. "I wish you happiness," he said. "And I hope you find the right person soon." She wanted to say something else, but Ethan stood up. "Our movie is about to start," he said politely. "If you'll excuse us." He reached out naturally and took my hand. I felt my entire palm engulfed in his grip, and somehow my heart was pulled along with it. It wasn't long before we reached the ticket gate. I was holding an iced Coke in one hand, a bucket of popcorn in the other, and my right hand was firmly held in someone else's. I couldn't pull away even if I wanted to. The ticket was still in my pocket. Ethan looked back at me and said, "Call my name." I hesitated, my heart pounding. Finally I called out, "Sophie." He chuckled. "I want to get the ticket." He didn't confirm or deny, but he must have realized my inconvenience because he finally let go of my hand. I chose a good central seat with a wide view. I placed the Coke in the middle armrest holder and looked up to see Ethan wiping my 3D glasses with alcohol wipes. "I'll do it myself," I offered, but he ignored me and carefully wiped them before handing them back. His gentlemanly gesture made my heart flutter slightly. I put them on, but my vision blurred. Why hadn't the movie started yet? Why were there so many ads? Why was the trailer playing again? Just then my phone rang from my pocket, like a savior calling. I quickly took it out and pretended to be busy, hoping I wouldn't have to talk to the man sitting beside me. I glanced down at the message. Then don't be afraid of me. I can't avoid what I should avoid. I read it carefully, tasting its words. There was a hint of humility and request hidden within. My heart skipped a beat. Something deep inside softened. Was I really that obvious? I didn't reply because I honestly didn't know what to say. Soon the movie started and I forced myself to focus. Fortunately, the plot was exciting, full of suspense, action, and dramatic confrontations between the protagonist and antagonist. At one intense explosion scene, the special effects were so realistic I instinctively grabbed the armrest. It wasn't cold nor was it rough. It was the fabric of Ethan's suit sleeve. Underneath, his arm was solid and firm. I instantly realized what I had grabbed. He looked over and asked softly, "Huh?" I jerked my hand away immediately. "Sorry," I mumbled. I was scared by the special effects. I made up an excuse. "I just wanted to get a Coke." As soon as I finished speaking, the big cup of Coke was handed to me. I wasn't thirsty, but I took it anyway and took a casual sip through one of the two straws. Looking sideways, I saw Ethan watching me with a complicated expression. He tried to hide his smile, but I caught it. Then I noticed something strange. "Wait, I just used that straw," I said, lowering my head and spitting it out awkwardly. My face burned red, as if I had done something scandalous. "I forgot to tell you," Ethan said, taking the straw and holding it in his hand. "Drink it," I asked stupidly. "Don't you want to drink it?" He shook his head. "I'm not thirsty." After that, things settled down. Ethan seemed to be fully immersed in the movie. He didn't try to discuss the plot with me or turn to check on me. Meanwhile, I kept glancing over, which only made me feel more anxious. Once the movie ended, it was already past 10. We stepped outside, and the cool night air helped settle my emotions a bit. Today had been too surreal. I no longer had any romantic thoughts. I just wanted to go home. It was a little cold outside, and my mind was still foggy from everything. Ethan stood in front of me and asked with a smile, "Would you like some midnight snack?" I pursed my lips and shook my head, feeling uncomfortable. He looked at me and tried to touch my face, but I turned my head away. Silence hung in the air for a moment before he finally put his hand in his suit pants pocket. My throat felt dry as I spoke, facing him but not daring to look directly at him. "My heart feels like it's being hit by a small hammer," I admitted. "Ethan, it's like this. After you told me the truth, I began to wonder whether I succeeded in confronting the boss because of you. And whether I was doubting myself because of you." Ethan listened quietly, unmoving. I took a deep breath and continued. "So I think there are many misunderstandings and problems between us. I think we need to reevaluate our relationship carefully." I met his dark gaze and hesitated for a moment. Did I understand what he truly thought of me? Probably not entirely. I wasn't stupid, but I wasn't smart enough either. Why did he like me, especially when I complained about him daily on WeChat? I half joked that he probably wanted to strangle me. But seeing his expression, I unexpectedly felt a twinge of sadness. Ethan nodded. "I know," he said simply. I hummed, thinking about whether to say anything nice. But before I could react, I suddenly felt warmth on my lips. Ethan kissed me. The mall had mostly closed, but a few people were still coming out. They looked at us, but my first reaction wasn't nervousness. It was embarrassment. I couldn't think clearly anymore. Only astonishment remained. I had just drunk a lot of iced cola, so my lips were cold. Yet Ethan's were even warmer. I knew exactly how red my face was without needing a mirror. My cheeks were burning hot, close to exploding. It was a short kiss, just a brief press of lips. When he pulled away, the air rushed into my lungs and I coughed violently. Then I heard him say, "Sophie, I want to tell you. It was actually my assistant who discovered the detailed content of your report. We will never allow such black sheep to exist." His voice was loud and clear. Was that really the case? I was still dazed from the kiss and hadn't processed anything properly. I mumbled a quick goodbye and practically fled home, My feelings tangled beyond explanation. Back home I took a hot bath, but the fatigue in my body didn't ease. Lying in bed I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed everything from today. Meeting Ethan, learning he was my boss, having dinner together, watching a movie, and then the kiss. I reached out and touched my lips. Don't mention it. Ethan's lips were strangely soft, with a faint, unknown fragrance. I wondered what he had applied. Maybe I could ask next time. Wait, why am I asking? Why am I so easily affected by Ethan? I knew I'd be up all night again.